I feel that the artist is not part of the music industry. And the reason I say that is that the managers, the agents, the promoters, the labels, everybody works in conjunction with each other. Whereas like an artist is interchangeable and can go, 5 years and this their usually cycle is like 5 years or whatever. And I think the secret in the business is that they are the business and they're the industry. And we were not at the table at all these discussions. The artist was not at the table at all these discussions.
Right.
And we didn't get any say so if the music was being lent out to Spotify or whatever for what rates. And that was not what should have happened. Nothing against Spotify or whatever they say, well, it's good. A lot of times say, well, we do it for the artist. We do it for the artist. We do it for the artist. But that's really not the case. It's for the right holders. So the right holders can pay a pittance to the artist. And I think that we have to realize the reason we're not a unit is that we're not collaborating on the business side. We always talk about collaborating creatively and all this, but we're not really sharing our information. We're not, heads off to you for doing what you've done, because you actually do that. You share a ton of information that's super valuable to people.
Thank you.
So it's like, and these communities can grow and all that kind of thing. But I think that, and it's not a us against them thing at all. I think, but I think we would definitely look to have more power as a unit, whereas artists got together and realized that we should be at the table at some of these discussions, because even if it's not now, what's the next one going to be? How do we figure that out?
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. The book, 3rd edition, is out now everywhere, and audiobook, all that good stuff. Today, my guest is Clarence Greenwood. Most of you know him as Citizen Cope. Now, I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan of Citizen Cope for probably 2 decades or so. I wore out the Clarence Greenwood Recordings album back in the day, and it was a real treat getting to chat with Cope today. He is somebody who has been signed to 4 different major labels, and we talk about this early on in his career, and then has been releasing records independently for the last 10, 15 years or so, and we talk about that transition as well. Citizen Cope has always kind of existed just below the mainstream, so much so that he's never really had a radio hit. However, he's been massively successful. And the Clarence Greenwood Recordings, the album actually hit gold status 15 years after it was released, which is unheard of. And that was not from TikTok, mind you. I know that's what we've been talking about a lot lately, is how the resurgence of songs. It's just been a steady growth. There were no massive spikes over the years or anything like that. And sure, he's had sync placements here and there on pretty high profile shows that might have given little bumps like that. But for the most part, it has been he's a word of mouth artist, and he's an artist that has grown live over the years, and the records are timeless. If you're a fan, you can listen to the record today and it's or listen to the records from 20 years ago, and they're always going to feel current. That's what timeless is. We get into a lot of great discussions about the difference between what it's like to work with labels and what it's like to release records independently. And he's had a great career and still has a great career. He just finished a tour, and he's about to release a new album in July of this year, and you should listen to the singles that he has out right now because they're excellent. They're incredible. I'm still a huge fan, and it was an absolute treat chatting with Cope today. You can find Citizen Cope everywhere on the internet, of course. All of his records, all of that good stuff. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and Twitter. Visit aristake.com. Get on the email list. That is, yes, email still the most important thing in this day and age when we have been prevented access from our audience through the social platforms. I would prefer if we stayed in touch over email. So go to aristake.com, sign up on the email list if you want to hear more from me and hear about future episodes and all the happenings in the new music business. But right now, if you could just pause this and leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or however you're listening to this right now on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the follow button if you want these shows to continue in your feed. All right, let's kick into the show. Clarence Greenwood, Citizen Co. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, it's great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's funny. I've over the years I've seen people call you Citizen Co. Call you Clarence. What do you prefer?
Well, Clarence is my real name. Cope is a nickname, which is short for my middle name.
Okay.
Which is
people
Cope.
Just call you Cope.
Yeah, sometimes people call me Cope, sometimes people call me Clarence. It's like, depends if it's a business setting or a more kind of like casual setting.
Yeah, I watched one interview that you gave on, it was very formal. There was, it was high production value. I feel it was like Yahoo News or something like that a couple of years ago. And the anchor of the program, he started with the Citizen Cope and then eventually migrated into Clarence Greenwood, and then he just looked like a deer in the headlights the whole time. I think he was out of his element talking about the music business. He didn't really know what was going on.
Oh, right.
It's when you ask people to talk about the music industry who've spent no time in it and just kind of dabble their toes and read the headlines, it's always entertaining to watch those and definitely be a part of them. And so you did a great job of trying to educate in like the 37 seconds that they gave you to speak. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was a difficult one to try to get it all in on that one.
Yeah, well,
because we all know how changing it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I appreciate you coming on and talking today. Here, I'll take some of that if you want to pass that through. What I want to dig in. Well, first off, I saw you just got off of a solo tour. How did that go? How was it? Doing this tour solo after.
It went well. I've always done solo tours like throughout my career, so it's always been kind of like something I've enjoyed doing and expressing the songs like that in a more kind of in your face way. Yeah, and it's been great because I'm just, what's interesting about performing is when you allow yourself to grow. There's times where you're not growing, and then you see, oh wow, there's something creative in the performance section that just grew as far as communication and everything. So I think that's one of the real blessings in playing music or recording is getting kind of over humps or creative kind of just stagnation.
What do you feel the big differences in that communication with the audience when you're performing solo versus when you have your band with you?
Well, I just think over the years I've just been more focused on kind of being a part, having the whole thing as a union, as opposed to me going out and having to give everyone the best show they've ever had, or me putting that on myself. So I think creatively, like maybe just realizing that the people are actually on your side.
I love that. I think what you do is it's almost like kind of creating an experience collectively with everyone versus just a performance. And there's some artists out there that do this really well. Trevor Hall being another one who I know you've played with a bit, who can kind of be in the space and just collectively elevate everyone together. And I feel like you do that really well. And what is your intention when you kind of step out on stage, when you go out, with an audience? What are you looking to accomplish?
I guess to connect to a higher purpose, a higher kind of vibration, and to be able to communicate that and it to be shared. And one of the great things about, at being able to perform in front of people is that people are part of the whole thing. It wouldn't be, the energy kind of goes off them and they receive it and give it back. And it's a cycle, kind of a universal type thing. And so, I guess, getting over those stages is being able to connect and to be able to communicate, something to a group of people from one person.
Yeah. How was it for you over COVID when you weren't able to connect in person?
Well, I think I realized that how important the audience is to the show, because there's not a show without audience. I also went to Brazil recently, and like the party in the audience was kind of more than what's happening or as equal to what was happening on stage.
Sure.
It's just like it, if that makes any sense. I was like, oh man, I've been missing out being on stage all this time.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me a different, not that I don't go to plenty of shows, which I do, but just the energy of the audience when that unity can happen is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I imagine, because when people come to your shows, and I guess just anyone going to any show, it's not necessarily about the artist as much as it is about themselves going to awaken something or going to have a great time for themselves, and you're kind of the facilitator of that experience. Now, of course, they're buying tickets because they know that you're going to help facilitate this great experience for them. But I would imagine it's probably quite a different energy and vibe when it's a band show and it's at Red Rocks and it's more of a party. And it's outside and whatever, versus when it's more of an intimate theater and people are seated and you're kind of, they're just taking it in acoustically.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's both those things where it's like the element of being an event, but I think, primarily as an artist, the best way to connect is with people who really value the music. And I understand like the idea of like festivals and all this kind of stuff to like expand your audience. But when it gets to the point where it's not about the artist is when you kind of lose the point. I think if I was to see like Stevie Wonder or Jimi Hendrix, I'd want to be seeing them. It wouldn't be like, oh, I was at this festival and I saw Jimi Hendrix.
Sure.
Or this kind of thing. So I think that level of the festivals where everyone is kind of like being put together that necessarily wouldn't be in the festival itself being the event, as opposed to the actual artist being the event. That kind of turned at when festivals started happening.
Sure. And I mean, I think, you found yourself at an interesting position throughout your career in that I feel like you've always kind of drifted below the mainstream and built a kind of a cult following of people who are always showing up for the artist, for you, the artist, and for your records versus just a hit song or something like that they heard on the radio and that they like, you know, passively enjoy and then go with their friends. And so I feel like, you know, the experience that you probably have with your audience is going to be quite different than what a pop artist might have, even if they're, you know, playing bigger, larger stages, because it's a fleeting thing that they, you know, go through when it's just a flash in the pan moment of a hit. And you kind of sustained this level where you've, you know, you have built an audience based on, you know, your records and the music because you've been below that mainstream point.
Yeah. I think it's always challenging when, you know, you're relying on, you know, pop radio or something, because you always kind of be beholden to kind of whatever changes they made musically or creatively. But I think that, you know, I always wanted to have big records, don't get me wrong. So
of course.
And eventually records became big records and they became gold or platinum records, but it just took me a long time. And I've been really fortunate to have people that kind of came along the way and listened, and it wasn't just an explosion right away, you know, even though that would have been nice. Because I think that but my stuff was always a little kind of you know, speaking on the human condition in the time when people really didn't speak about it, you know. So I think that, you know, to be able to kind of express yourself, even in, especially in kind of like rock music or whatever, you know, it was kind of like a period of energy as well, you know. So it just
yeah. I mean, your records, right? I think I read somewhere that they achieved, or I think the Clarence Greenwood album recordings achieved gold status like a few years after it came out, or something like that, or some of your songs even
that went gold like 15 years later.
Isn't that's nuts?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's so. This
and it's
like,
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because that record never charted, not one week.
That's
on
nuts.
Radio or sales, and just continued over the years. And it's a very kind of Moneyball scenario, if you ever saw The Money, but it's kind of like a long term.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's and your sound and you've kind of maintained this. I mean, I would argue more of a timeless sound that has remained consistent. Where listening to that record now is as current and prevalent as listening to it when it came out 20 years ago. And it's probably why it's maintained that steady upward growth, is because it didn't have the, you know, the timely production elements and techniques of the moment and of the era, which kind of stamp it of a time period. Is like, you know, my favorite game to play is listening to a song that's on wherever I'm at and try to pinpoint the year within like 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And I don't think I'd be able to do that if I didn't know your music and I just heard a song come on. I wouldn't know if it came out yesterday or came out, you know, 20 years ago. And that's, I think, the timeless nature of it and why it's kind of, you know, stayed relevant and achieved gold status 15 years after it came out.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I guess the point was to try to make something that was timeless. I mean, that was always kind of, it's one thing to make a great song, but then it's how do you make a great record?
Right.
And how do you get a great performance out of that record? And how do you make it speak out of the speakers? Because, you know, it can speak to you in your house, and you can speak to you in front of your friends. It can even speak live.
Yep.
But those speakers don't really lie.
I love that. I'm curious about your process with this new record. So far, you've released 3 singles off of it, Miss Prado, Close to You, and Dancing Lullaby. I feel like, speaking of production, I mean, especially Close to You, the production, it's far more involved than production that I've heard on your records in the past, and there's a lot happening. The kind of the sonic landscape is vast, and there's a lot happening there, whereas, like, especially as contrast to kind of your last album, which was just acoustic. What was the decision to kind of go in this sonic direction for this album?
Well, it was interesting because I wanted to make the vocals really great. We started out, even for Close to You, start with the vocals and guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and get the vocals really nice, and 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 it kind of came from the song just being led from that, and
Hmm.
brought in some orchestration because I felt like we needed it. And when I got close to when I had songs a certain way, kind of close, or started, I started working with Alex Elena, who I usually produce all my own records, but
Mm-hmm.
Alex did a great job in, like, just being a creative ear and also contributor and collaborator
Mm.
as well. So I think this one kind of was able to be, when somebody's in the room, that gives you confidence on a creative level, not just on a technical level.
Sure.
It was just a great thing. We started just gelling and trying a whole bunch of things and not being. But I think the vastness of the record has to do with just a culmination of stuff I've always wanted to do as well,
Mm.
and kind of spending a lot of time with it and having that, collaborator and Alex to do it with.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, no, it's what's cool is, so much of your music is about the vibe and the energy and the feeling, and the lyrics always kind of help guide, and it all feels very connected. And so, I mean, this production works really well. It doesn't stray by any means. I think it absolutely enhances the song and the vibe, and it elevates. And it's one that you can really just settle into and fall deep into. I love the trumpet. I'm a trumpet player, so I appreciate the
Yeah.
little trumpet flares happening throughout. That's
Yes.
cool.
Yeah. Yes. It reminded me of, like, the Gabriel calling when I was in there in the session. I was like, can you just do this thing at the beginning?
Yeah.
And and horn player killed it. He did a great job.
That's great. So I want to talk a little bit, just kind of about the behind the scenes on the business side, because, if I counted correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been with 4 different major labels over the course of your career, and then the last few records have been independent. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. First off, kind of, what has it been like, if we just rewind a little bit, going back? What was it like to kind of jump from label to label, record to record, and how was that experience?
I mean, it was just part of whatever. I was really lucky to get some interest in those companies. I'd always kind of felt like I had to get a major deal, so I kind of went after and tried to shop my own deal at the time, and was able to get people's attention, eventually led to me getting with people that I trusted on the creative side. So, I signed with the first record label I did, I signed and the record didn't come out. And then I signed with DreamWorks. I had to do a whole new record.
Oh,
I
wow.
signed with Capitol first. The record didn't come out. They dropped me, and then I went to DreamWorks, had to make a whole new record. And then I did the record, and it felt like the marketing promotion when I played him Sideways and Sun's Gonna Rise for the second record. I felt like they weren't really gonna get it. And I just put the thing out with Sideways with Carlos Santana on Arista, and felt like that would be a better place for me to put my second record out, because I didn't feel like they understood the big songs that I had coming.
Yeah.
And also I'd given them an opportunity with Drummer and If There's Love, and I felt like they kind of, DreamWorks wasn't a marketing promotion. It was kind of like a pyramid scheme. Great executives on the creative side.
Yeah.
But it was great executives on the creative side, and I loved those guys, Lenny Walker, Mo Austin,
Sure.
Michael Goldstone. But, so it was kind of like a situation, and they ended up folding like before I even put my next record out. So it was kind of a thing that I kind of I saw something coming. So this isn't working.
Sure.
And did the record with Arista, and then they closed their doors, and then it went to RCA for 2 records. So I felt like it was more just the creative people on the label side that I signed with were switching so much, or the companies would go down. So it wasn't like, I think if I would have had one, like, I would have stayed at Arista the whole time, it had not fallen.
And now it's back. But yeah,
not like the old Arista.
That's true. That's true.
The old Arista was not a joke.
So, well, I'm curious about the first record that you did with Capitol that they shelved, they didn't put out. I mean, that can be a traumatic experience for a lot of artists, and that can be that can be a death toll for a lot of artists. I mean, that's something that kills a lot of bands. If they sign with a label, they make the record and they shelve it, they don't put it out. I mean, I've heard bands breaking up because of that. I mean, how was that for you? And did they just release you, and were you able to re-record those songs, or did you have to write all new songs for the record you did with DreamWorks?
No, I had to write all new songs.
Wow.
And so then what happened is they have a re-recording restriction and all this kind of stuff. But to answer the question, it was really, really hard to get dropped, because I felt like my life was going to change. And I think that happens with any artist that happens to, where they get dropped. It's kind of like you get this, oh, wow, I told you so moment. And then it goes down to like, I told you so. And the other people saying, I told you so.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as it looks out there, So I think I had a moment of kind of it was just a spiritual test. And what happened was that it made me write If There's Love, and write Salvation, and write all these other great Hands of the Saints, and Let the Drummer Kick, and kind of continue on. I'm not saying it was easy. It was really difficult, but then, because it's harder actually after you get dropped and to get signed again, because you kind of got this, stigma about you.
Yeah.
But a lot of, I think it can easily break you down. And then the DreamWorks thing happened, and then I was like, oh God, this is really a record company on the marketing and promotion side, and when Arista happened, it was just like, oh, that was devastating, because I had the Clarence Greenwood Recordings, and that was about to be really pushed hard. But it's just one of these things is taught you to, for spiritual and personal growth, this whole the whole path musically, creatively, and also on the business side is just really taught for you to learn something,
Yeah.
and it's not meant to be easy.
That's for sure. So you've been putting out records independently now for some time. It's probably been at least 10 years or so. And you kind of, what's been the process of kind of going at this now on your own with Rainwater Recordings? And just like, is that an operation? Is it just the name that you slap on the records you self-release?
Yeah, it's just a name I slap on, and I also, we hire publicists, do the same things, hire
Sure.
publicists, hire radio people, and then you have to approve artwork and all this,
Yeah.
and do your little campaign. Um, but it's obviously harder without, you know, that 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 push behind you.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't really use the majors for that, and that's one of the reasons I left. I didn't use the A&R department or
Right.
the at that point, at the point I was at RCA, but I relied heavily on A&R, in the
Mm-hmm.
past, and it was greatly, um, I think that's one of the hard things about doing it independently is you don't have a record man. And I think every artist needs a record man, and a
What do you mean
record
by a
man
record
is
man?
somebody.
Yeah.
A record man is somebody who understands your potential and how to get that on record, and that could be
Mm.
a record industry guy, and also with the means to help develop you. Not just with an opinion, but putting my money and is an interest and time, and has expertise in making big records. So that's like kind of, Jimmy Iovine's a record man essentially.
Mm.
He's a corporate guy, but he's essentially a record man. Lenny Walker was a record man. L.A. Reid is a
Yeah.
record man. Like they before him, Ivan Erdogan. All these kind of people. So I think one of the takeaways from that is you're like relying on your friends or family or check this or musical peers, but there's nobody in there that's like, oh, I remember when I was doing the record with Prince and da 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 da, and I just came in and I realized that he 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 could produce himself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of and also insights of, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, go in and cut it. Those kind of moments I would call Lenny Walker, and I called him when I did Sideways. I said, what do you think of this? He said, go in and cut it.
Just the
Yeah.
trust was right in putting you just to go do it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you have a, a kind of a, a, an outlet that's not kind of that has skin in the game.
Yeah.
Even though it's not their own money, but it's their reputation, and they
Sure.
also essentially want you to reach your potential. I think
Mm.
that's what they see something great in you.
You're talking a lot in the present tense. I don't know how common that is. How common that is these days. We're not seeing as much development with new signings with artists like that. I mean, it seems in kind of at least the major label realm over the last 10, 15 years, it's like you have to be established, understand who you are, and already making waves before kind of a label will touch you. And that development, I don't know, I haven't seen too much of in the last 10, 15 years. Is something that we've really lost with kind of the rise of the new music business with social media and with streaming and all of that. It's like, what has been your experience in terms of just kind of like maybe some of your peers or colleagues and what you're seeing in the label realm of kind of some of the newer artists that are coming out?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. they already had to they established themselves in a way with what their sound was, what everything else was, and then once they could, needed to reach a different level, they, sign on with a major. But I think there's still development in that thing. I think what, the artist her, I think she was developed for a long time. Peter Edge did a great job with her, and she did a great job, and probably waiting a long time. And I think that there still are artists that have been in the system, I think, for a minute and have developed in their own way, but I think it does take that personal interest in some way, or if it's a small label, they're able to push the needle that way. But it's definitely algorithms that are followed, and it's not really it's not as much heartstrings.
Yeah, I mean, I think the median age of A&R reps at major labels right now is like 24, and that's because they're just sitting on TikTok all day, just trying to, just see what's trending, and they're looking at spreadsheets and finding the algorithm, and just bringing in the artists that kind of have something moving right now. And yeah, there's a little bit of that development. Oftentimes they're coming in through a production deal, and there's a lot of or like a indie label that does a joint venture or something with a major. But then oftentimes we hear the artist traded everything, and that's why Megan Thee Stallion's like suing her initial management, label, production company all in one, because the label, because she doesn't feel now that it was something that was fair for her. But it's so it's interesting where we're at right now. I'm curious.
Well, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
All right, ask the question.
I was going to pivot a little bit.
Yep. Pivot.
All right. I was just saying, so now that you're releasing records independently, and is there a difference in process and how you approach it? I mean, it seems like you were given a lot of freedom and autonomy to make records the way you wanted to make them, with the people you wanted to make them. It seems like most of your songs are just solely written by you. You produced most of the stuff yourself. I didn't have too many collaborations that were kind of pushed on you. What's been the biggest difference? Has it just been kind of having to manage the release process and strategy and all of that?
That part, but that's what I was just saying, really, about just the connection with the record band, the kind of unit. Sure. And I think that's one thing. The difference is also that it's harder and harder to get your own audience now. Yes. So you can't even get to them, let alone new people. And I think that all the major kind of internet companies have, kind of trying to take ownership in people's data and all this kind of stuff is not a good thing. It's not a good thing for Ticketmaster. It's not a good thing for the artists. It's not a good thing for the fans. It's not a good thing for us not to be able to get to people who listen to our music, because otherwise we have no way to grow. And so you end up advertising to a shrinking base.
Yep.
And so it doesn't, you could get lucky and sustain that luck for a while. And once, your point is to get the music to as many people as can be. And if it's great, then, one person tells 5 people, and those 5 people tell 5 people. And then, it kind of builds like that. But I think the point of the internet was to have this kind of thing where everyone got to get access to things, but that access has been blocked.
Yes.
So it's very difficult. And I'm looking at the situations. You look at the numbers and streamings. It's like do I really want to like take money and make records anymore? You know,
Mm,
it's kind of on that, because you can make a cheap record, but then you have to market it. But you can't really make a cheap record if you want to make a classic. It
right.
just doesn't take. It takes time, and
Mm.
I was always into taking, you know, taking, and time costs money.
Yeah, I mean, to get to your point about the promise of the internet, I mean, yes, it was supposed to be the great equalizer and the democratization of music and of access, really. And you didn't necessarily need the gatekeepers as much to give you permission to reach an audience. But now we've kind of reached the other end of that spectrum, where because there's so much noise and the gates are flung open and everyone's piling in, with 100,000 songs uploaded a day to Spotify or more. It's like, how do you stand out? And that's the real challenge right now. But then, artists like you, where you have a fan base, it's like it's still a struggle to reach them when you don't have that access, and any of the social companies can flip a switch and you lose all your access overnight to that audience. And same with, I mean, Ticketmaster and Live Nation. I mean, we should be getting our customers data and information. The fact that we don't know who's in the room at our shows, I mean, that's criminal.
Right,
Like
right.
it's
I mean,
insane that, yeah.
yeah. The thing with that is that it they want to hold their information, and they call it their fans now. From I've heard promoters say, "Oh, these are our customers," and it's then they come in,
Yeah.
and they 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 hit them with a bunch of emails, and they unsubscribe.
Hmm.
So it's like Ticketmaster, just because you want to see me doesn't mean you want to see, Jack Johnson or so and so or
Right.
Slightly Stupid or whatever. So they don't want to get all these emails from Ticketmaster, so they
Right.
unsubscribe. So you lose the customer. So it's not. I'll be honest. It was easier to sell tickets before the internet.
Mm.
Now, not on a high level because everyone knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but it used to be one paper would just write something in the weekly.
Yep.
The club would announce it, and maybe you did some radio ads or something. But
Hmm.
there was also a more active music journalism thing going on, where there'd be people writing about stuff on a small level. And
Mm.
there'd be ways to get it. But I think, uh, just to add to your point, we have to get you know that access, or otherwise, I think with Spotify, I think their point is just to get a whole bunch of people to do it. So if
Right.
they do a billion songs, they do one stream, that's still a billion streams for them, and it's a billion, and it's the time spent on the app.
Yep. Yep. Right. They don't care what the people are listening to as long as they're staying on the app and they're listening to something. That's why they've gone all in on podcasts, because it doesn't matter to them whether they're
Right.
listening to a podcast or listening to a song. It just for them, it's a user is a user, and a playable minute's a playable minute, and that's just the numbers that they can use with investors and advertisers and all that stuff. I do want to get back to the
Yeah.
point you mentioned. Is it even worthwhile for you to make records anymore because of streaming? Um, what are you seeing now that you own all the rights to your music and your records and masters and all of that by releasing it independently? Um, are you, and you've established such a diehard audience and fan base? Are you do you look at making a record as what is it going to return financially for you, or do you take money from what you make live and say, you know what, it's important for me to make new records with that, even though I know it's not necessarily going to recoup my investment?
Yeah. I've always I've always been crazy about my records and spent a lot of my own money on it. Even when
Yeah.
I got advances, I wouldn't take like I'd spend all the whole thing on the record. So it was really more about, like I say, making a timeless piece of art,
Yep.
and then the value of that. When I say worth, I mean a financial, where it there's diminishing returns, where it's just like, oh, how much, how many of these can you afford to make? As they have built the system to be able to, that everyone right now, you have to sell for the same price. I don't understand this. I don't understand why streaming is the same price for somebody that's just doing this as a hobby, and then somebody who's doing it that actually brings people in. And so I think you have another situation where eventually that will change.
Yeah.
So right now it's not valued very high, but there's, for example, a lot of the distributors are just giving away the licenses and blanket licenses, whereas these licenses are not being given away by majors, and it's not being given away by publishers. So if you do a deal with Facebook, or if you do a deal with TikTok, but on the master side, a lot of the indie TuneCores and DistroKid, they don't do masters, they do blanket licenses. So therefore, there's no value. Some of the license I've got as a publisher for Facebook and TikTok are very substantial. Whereas on the master side, they're not doing that on the indie side. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, well, if you look at the indie distributors like a TuneCore, a DistroKid, or CD Baby, or any of them, it's they're serving a customer base, which is their artists who just want to be everywhere, and it's less important for them to have their music withhold and from the platforms to have better leverage to negotiate, whereas they just want to be everywhere. And if you talk to kind of the majority of the artists with these standalone DIY distributors, they would tell the distributor, just get us on there. We don't care about, the license and or the fees. And the business model for these, it doesn't really make a difference to a DistroKid or a TuneCore what they get for the license, considering they don't make a commission. They don't have any skin in it. The business model for them is that artist pays an annual amount, and these companies are built on subscription basis. So whether, doing a license with TikTok, if they pay $100 million or $1, it's kind of like, for them, they're not paying any of that to the contract that they have with their customers, which is the artists, is they don't take a commission. And so like for them, it's like, well, if you just want to be on the platforms, we're not really going to push that hard for a higher license fee, because you're going to, we don't make any of that, really, is how it works. But I'm curious, so do you have a publishing deal still?
Yes.
Who's your publisher?
I have an administrator with Wixon.
And
Randall Wixon.
Got it. And when they do the deals for your songs with these platforms, are you getting paid from those?
Yes.
Oh, you are. Oh, that's good. Okay.
So that's why I'm bringing it up, because I see the publishing. I see the publishing check, and even when I was on major labels, the majors aren't contributing that side of the money to my unrecouped fund. So,
oh wow.
So Sony did a deal with Peloton. My publisher did a deal with Peloton. Sony got paid the same thing I got paid, because in Peloton's situation, it was a 1-for-1 deal. So if anyone did their deal with Peloton had to pay everybody. Yep. So they paid with the rights holder, the publishing company, and the master holder. And our publishing company was Peloton was cool with us as far as like, okay, they were about to go public, so they wanted to get all the right stuff dealt with.
Yeah.
But they did that with all, and I'm not sure what kind of deal Sony did or Universal did, but they didn't contribute it to the unrecouped fund of the artist. And there were dollar for dollar numbers because it was a license. It was a 1-for-1 license for Peloton.
Well, that sounds like some shady accounting practices on the label's part, and I would be curious how they got away with striking a license deal for their entire catalog and not having to pay that out.
I mean, it wasn't even for the catalog; it was for the people that were violated, and the numbers were written. All the numbers were down, so it was all automated to okay, this got violated 1,000 times or whatever, and so if it was a situation, well, I don't know anyone at a major that got those things happening. So I mean, I've been real happy with what Wixon has done.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious. I mean, do you still? Because I'm assuming these labels, I guess like Sony, Universal, who still have the rights to some of your earlier records. They must have to report to you. So you're looking at the reports and you're
you see the audits and they're not putting that down. And also other artists that have major publishing, friends of mine that have major publishing deals and that did settlements with the company. I mean, they're doing settlements with TikTok and Facebook on the master and the publishing side.
Yep.
So that's what they've been doing. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty substantial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the way they can do it is just hold on to that money. I mean, it's the reason Black Sheep is suing their Universal right now over the copyrights that were basic because the labels gave license in exchange for profit share, which, Spotify. So instead of taking that money and distributing it, they gave a little bit or none to the artists. And they didn't even really give, because it's essentially a license. It's not, we're licensing this catalog. So a license is 1-for-1, publisher, master.
Yeah.
And then master side would make you be able to get a piece of that deal.
Right. I mean, how the label contracts used to be written, sales were calculated differently than licenses. And I think that was kind of, pre-streaming. That's how a lot of the contracts were written. And so that was the argument. That's why like Eminem sued, 10, 15 years ago as well, because they're like, oh, this is a license and we should be getting 50%, not 18% or whatever. And so now the labels have smartened up and they're like, okay, well, we're putting in these contracts, that streaming equals sales, and that's going to be the royalty amount that we pay out. But they should still be paying if they're out for these settlements, these licenses with like Peloton and Facebook and TikTok and all of that. But they might not be. They're not.
But I mean, that's why you got to audit them, I guess.
Right.
But, it's just a situation like, I'm not sure exactly what they settle with TikTok or Facebook, but it's known that they do those deals.
Oh yeah, I mean the NMPA just sued Twitter today. They just announced that they're suing Twitter for $250 million today because of all these infringements, and that they haven't really struck a licensing deal with publishers. So if that goes through, you'll probably see another windfall from Wixon sometime fairly soon, theoretically. But yeah. Well, that's good. So I this is I guess moving forward, you got this record coming out. What do you have a release date of the full record, the full album?
I think it was going to be in early July, but now we're looking at like late July, July 28th.
Cool. And who do you use for distribution for this?
That is just, we're just going straight with TuneCore on this one.
TuneCore. Cool. Is that how it's been through the last all the records, or have you changed distribution over the years?
I've got a couple, like 4 through TuneCore, and then there's one through a couple went through the Orchard.
Okay, cool. I saw one of them was at least it listed as marketed and distributed by 30 Tigers, but that was probably a few years back, right?
That was the 30 Tigers one. I did one with them, and I did one with Megaforce, which is Missy.
Right.
He's always been real cool. Over at the Orchard.
Killer. Well, Cope, this is it's been a great time chatting with you, and I appreciate you for being so transparent about everything. It's nice to hear when artists can kind of like pull back the curtain a little bit. And I know that everyone listening to this really appreciates hearing everything from you. I have one final question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and that is, what does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
I think it's to find inner peace. I think the whole thing is a spiritual test. And whoever's been put into this thing has been put in to learn something, because this will test you in every single way, because your heart is involved and your art is involved, and it's intertwined with livelihood, which is intertwined in this society with success. And we have to, we're usually empathetic, and we put our love into what we do. And we love a taste of acknowledgement here and there. We love to be able to take our significant others out to a meal sometimes. And I think every level of this thing will give you tests. Like the bottom of it will test you to see what you're made of. If you get some success, the level of success you get, a lot of people can't handle it. And there's levels of, and I hate that word success, but what we would consider as that.
Sure.
Is I think that all the different things in music come for you, the ego, the money, access to substances or whatever, this kind of thing. And all those things you have access to all of them, whether it's companionship with somebody that you never thought you could have companionship with. So I think a lot of things are open to you after not having any of it. So I think that's why I look at this as more of a spiritual kind of path than we look at it as kind of a material one.
Beautiful. Citizen Cope, thank you so much. That was great.
Yep. And I wanted to add one thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that I feel that the artist is not part of the music industry. And the reason I say that is that the managers, the agents, the promoters, the labels, everybody works in conjunction with each other. Whereas like an artist is interchangeable and can go, 5 years, and their usually cycle is like 5 years or whatever. And I think the business, the secret in the business is that they are the business and they're the industry. And we were not at the table at all these discussions. The artist was not at the table at all these discussions.
Right.
And we didn't get any say so if the music was being lent out to Spotify or whatever, for what rates. And that was not what should have happened. Nothing against Spotify or whatever they say, well, it's good. A lot of times say, well, we do it for the artist. We do it for the artist. We do it for the artist. but that's really not the case. It's for the right holders. So the right holders can pay a pittance to the artist. And I think that we have to realize the reason we're not a unit is that we're not collaborating on the business side. You know, we always talk about collaborating creatively and all this, but we're not really sharing our information. We're not, you know, heads off to you for doing what you've done, because you actually do that. You share a ton of information that's super valuable to people.
Thank you.
So it's like, you know, and these communities can grow and all that kind of thing. But I think that, and it's not a us against them thing at all. I think, but I think we would definitely look to have more power as a unit, you know, whereas artists got together and realized that we should be at the table at some of these discussions, because even if it's not now, what's the next one going to be? You know, like how do we figure that out? You know? And
yeah, we need some kind of a real functioning, cohesive union or something that represents all artists that will demand a seat at the table, like the writers are doing right now in Hollywood with the Writers Guild strike. You know.
Yes.
So.
And every athletic team has it. You know, every like major professional thing has it, and we don't have, you know, we don't have the mentorship or the coaching anymore, you know, and it's not, you know, this is real. You know, I think artists are kind of like are kind of pit against each other. And so I think it would be great for us not to, you know, we can be pit against each other personally or taste wise or whatever, this and that, or ego wise. But as far as the financial part, I think, you know, there's a lot of things we can do.
Yes, definitely. Well, let's get working on it. Let's make it happen. All right.
All right. Well, hit me up. All right.
Will do. All right.
Thank you so
man.
much. And
Thanks
thank you for doing everything you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. We'll talk soon. Peace. Today's episode was edited by Maxton Hunter, theme music by Brass Roots District, and produced by all the great people at Ari's Take.